The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Steven Zakash here with my co-host Tulio Siragusa and our special guest today, who we'll introduce in a moment. So studies on youth enrichment and after-school programs show that when young people participate in organized activities, they strengthen their sense of belonging, build social skills, and see improvements in both well-being and academic outcomes. And at the same time, new research warns that many young people today lack in-person community connections, which can reduce their engagement and even their long-term civic participation. So for businesses that serve kids and families, this raises an important question. How do you design experiences that are fun and profitable while also building real connection in the communities you serve? And today, we're exploring what it looks like to build businesses that help kids learn, play, and grow while creating spaces where families feel like they truly belong. Tulio, introduce our special guest today.
Absolutely. Today, our guest is Michael Browning Jr. He is the CEO and founder of Unleashed Brands, which is a platform company that houses the trusted brands that help kids learn, play, and grow. Unleashed Brands was launched in 2021 to give parents a resource for youth enrichment experiences. And today, its concepts include Urban Air Adventure Park, The Little Gym, Sylvan Learning, Snupology, Class 101, Premier Martial Arts, and Water Wings Swimming School. Michael's first launched Urban Air Adventure Park in 2011 and has since helped grow it into a leading family indoor adventure park brand serving millions of kids each year. Along the way, he has built a reputation for designing brands that put family connection, joy, and growth at the center. Michael, welcome to the Bliss Business Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing. You know, community is fuel, and I've seen it play out millions of times. You know, we serve around 20 million kids a year, and my life work has been creating these environments where kids can escape, celebrate, and connect. And like you said, it all started with one trampoline park in Southlake, Texas in 2011, and it just really is all about the belonging and the confidence and the growth that these kids see when they're in these environments, because they don't really need like more entertainment. They need community and belonging, and that's the mission that we're on at Unleashed Brands.
You know, Michael, when we talk about like building community and connection in business, how is it reflected in the way Unleashed Brands designs your experiences for kids and families?
Community is not a hashtag. It's not a slogan, right? It's like, I was talking about like the check-in process, the greeting, the welcome, like knowing a kid's name when they show up, like partnering with parents and knowing that this business is a lighthouse in the community, and that kids feel like they belong when they walk in, and creating trust. And trust is built through repetition, right? Knowing we're going to go here and my kid's going to be seen and they're going to walk out taller than when they walked in. And so for us, it's about these experiences, and the experiences are about our people. It's about our lighting, our sound, our curriculum, our attractions, how we interact. It's not about transactions. It's not about, I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. It's not about the what, it's about the why. And when you really focus there, like we don't sell classes, camps, one-time events, celebrations, or leagues. That's just the what. The why is confidence, courage, self-discipline, respecting others that don't look and sound like them. These virtues, these values, these skills, that's what keeps people coming back. And that's what builds the sense of community in our locations.
I love it. I know even my kids have attended like some of your franchises, and both neurodivergent too. And so it was like, they're coming in as they are and participating as they can in their different ways. But there was this sense of, community and belonging in there. And, when we've gone through some of those programs with our kids, you end up as a parent too, we've made some of our lifelong friends, in that same process. So it's even just beyond the children, right? It's
Totally, right? Like, so even we had started Urban Air back in 2011, my family and I, but while we were starting that, my wife and I had our first child. And where we went with that first child was the little gym. And we didn't own it. We were just customers. And it was in that little gym where we as first-time parents met other first-time parents, where Nick and Stephanie, who are and continue to be the franchisees there, they came around us and said, hey, like, we don't necessarily have all the answers for you, but what we will do, our commitment to you, is that we will walk alongside you on your journey and be there for you every step of the way. And so it just touched us back in the day when we had just first started. And that was one of the reasons why when I launched Unleash Brands and wanted to bring the world's best brands into this platform, I chased after the Little Gym. And because of the community that it created for me as a father, my wife as a first-time mother, and in an area that we were new to.
Yeah.
Now, you serve a lot of families across hundreds of locations, many brands, different markets. Some come in for various parties, weekly classes, or even long-term skill development. Just curious, what have you learned about what families actually want from these experiences beyond the product itself, and how has that shaped the way you think about connection and belonging? What's some of the lessons you've learned through your experiences in this business?
Yeah, I think it may seem simple, but the reality is parents aren't buying more activity. Like, we are all busy. So I have 3 kids. As we talk today, I have a daughter who's 14, I have a daughter who's 11, and I have a son who's 5. They're busy, right? Like, every night of the week, I feel like I'm an Uber driver, and the ship's passing in the night, and then the weekend comes, and then it's sports, right? It's more sports and more things. And so parents aren't out there to say, man, I wish my kids were busier. That's not it. What they're buying is the outcome of who their kids are developed into and the feelings that their kids get of community and belonging. And so when you think about like what has to go into that to create that, it's safety. Like, that's a table stakes. Like, you got to prioritize that. And then it's the growth that those families see in their kids. And then it's the joy those kids get in repetition every time they're in there. And then it's the community that is built with those kids, like friendships, teammates, comrades. Like, it is so important. And so like, it's all about like taking a kid who's anxious on that first visit and feeling invisible and making that kid come into that environment. And now all of a sudden, they're involved, they're engaged, they're building their confidence, they're building their connection. So I would tell people, like, as parents, like, we're busy and we're not looking for more activity, but what we are looking for, again, it goes back to that why of how are my kids developing? How are my kids growing? And it takes a lot of infrastructure to be able to deliver that at scale over and over and over again.
Michael, how do you think that youth enrichment and even family experiences will evolve over the next decade, especially as we become a very digitized, AI-driven society? Do you think kids are going to change what they spend time on? What do you envision for the future?
So what I would say is tech's definitely not going away, right? We're all fighting every night, right, to get more personal connection with our kids, get them off their screens, right? It's just a constant battle. So tech's not going anywhere. Tech's actually, it's getting louder. Belonging's getting rarer because you've probably studied it. I study it all the time. A concept called connected loneliness. Like, we are connected with more people than ever before. We have more information than ever before, yet we and the youth of America feel lonelier than ever before, because there's a difference between followers and connections and community. They're not the same. And so that's why in-person experiences and the youth enrichment that we deliver matters even more than before. And like AI, it's going to shape behavior, right? Like, and I believe we need to teach our kids how to use it as a tool, but it cannot replace real world competence. It cannot replace what kids crave. They want to move, they want to build social skills, they want to be known by name by people they see in their community. And so the best brands will use technology to remove friction, but not replace the human aspect of their business. And so we're leaning in all the time saying seamless booking, faster check-in, smarter staffing, better safety, personalized progression as people move through our brands. But we're not looking at it as going like we're looking at we are humans that are designed, our DNA is to be together in relationships with other humans. And therefore what we do, that's why we love what we do. It's not going to be replaced by goggles. It's not going to be replaced by AI. And so we look at it as a tool, but we've got to know that these kids are definitely leaning into it.
Yeah, I think about anytime there's like any of these sort of technological advances, it brings a little more complexity into our lives, while simplifying things, but those complexities often kind of spin off into areas and problems we could just never predict. And we're now kind of on this precipice with AI, and I don't think anyone has any grasp of, how that's going to impact our children growing up. And so it's probably even more important than ever to really be paying attention to how they're socializing, how they're using technology, and trying to give them some well-roundedness in their lives, right?
I couldn't agree more.
I think community is key. I spoke with a head of a VC about a year ago, and I said, what's next? What's like the next frontier after AI? And she was like, people are going to need to learn how to re-engage, like learning social skills is next, or getting interested in art, or, connecting. I was like, it's almost like the Renaissance 2.0 that's going to come next. And community is so key. And I love the way you're thinking about it. And I think more and more companies and more leaders, even those who are not, for example, selling to families or doing in the same line of business you do, can learn a lot about building community, And so especially in a very digitized world where people feel, like you said, more disconnected. So what advice would you give to those leaders in maybe more traditional industries who do want to build community and not just a customer list? Because that's really what it's about, building a community of people that resonate with your brand. What advice would you give them on how to do it effectively, even in traditional industries? Because I think it's very transferable too.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, whether or not your customer or your user is a kid or a family or not, right? Like everybody needs community. Everyone wants to be a part of a tribe that is like them, right? And that they can do life together. So I think what everyone has to understand first is like community, it doesn't scale just on good intentions alone. Like you've got to create the systems, and these systems have to make the behaviors, the right behaviors to create community. So you have to be very intentional. And you got to prioritize the things right. Like from the very beginning, when I started the first trampoline park, I always said, we're going to keep guests safe, happy, and we're going to make money. And because if you get it out of that order, you won't make money for very long. But it's safety plus a quality product or experience plus the connection. If that's in your product, then it's going to create trust. And then that's going to give you the energy that you need to create the belonging in every location. So what I always tell people is like, your core has got to be training. Like it's training from how you, for example, how you call a guest to talk to them about the birthday party they booked online and let them know we got it, we're there. Then how do you greet them? How do you deliver the curriculum, right? There's got to be playbooks and brand standards around all of these things. And it's safety, it's cleanliness, it's staffing, it's service. It's how do you handle a guest that's upset? Because you think about even in our business, like we have phenomenal operators but when you serve 20 million kids a year, even if you have a 99% customer satisfaction rating, 1% of 20 million people is still people that are upset, and you've got to treat them right. You got to earn them back. So training in your playbooks and brand standards are important. But then we talk about letting data help us understand what's truly happening in the business. Too many times operators will say, everyone's saying this. well, is it everyone or just the loudest someone? Or is it everyone or is just the last person that you talk to, right? There's a little bit of survey bias in there. And so it's like setting the KPIs correctly that you measure and then looking at that all the time and then updating your training and your playbook. So, for us, we use this metaphor analogy of what we call lead pins. Like in bowling, if you hit that first pin right, everything behind it falls down. It's like, what is that lead pin that when you hit it at the right angle with the right force is going to make everything else fall into place? And for us, that is the customer. When the customer wins, our operators win. When our operators win, we win. And so one thing I would say is never lose sight of the customer, never get off the floor, get feedback from your customer, both quantitatively and qualitatively, and put all that information on feedback loops so that you can constantly get better every single day. There's a saying that we say around here: we are on the constant pursuit of perfection to which we will never achieve. We get up every day going like, how do we beat yesterday?
I love it. I love we always love talking about systems and how you scale some of these things. And, you mentioned there, like feedback loops, this is a part of a system, but it's like vitally important for franchises, especially because they're on locations, you're dealing with all these locations across the country, and you're trying to sometimes herd cats if you don't have those playbooks and those training manuals and all that in place. And the concept of that, with that lead pin, like you talked about, being the customer, what are some of the kind of systems? We mentioned that a little bit, but I really want to dive in here on if you've got any kind of systems and things that other people can learn from as far as when dealing with that customer, that they can take to their business, outside of your industry.
Yeah, like functionally, right? Like I believe that we should try to connect with every single guest post their visit in any of our brands and understand, would you refer us to friends and family? How did we do on safety? How was our check-in process? How was cleanliness? How was the curriculum or service that you received, right? If you went to our cafe in one of our venues, was it accurate? Was it speedy? Did we have great service, right? And then like when they give us good or bad ratings, they're going like, what could we have done to make this a better rating? And then with AI, and I will say, this is where I do love it. You can take hundreds of thousands of qualitative customer comments. You can actually use AI to understand sentiment, understand themes, and then you can create your playbooks around how do I change the sentiment, change the theme. And here's another great one. You can take every call that comes into your business. If it's recorded, you can transcribe it easily through Microsoft 365. You can then put all of those transcripts into AI and start to understand what's happening on the phone. And so those are things we are always doing it every day at 9:30 a.m. All of my data refreshes for the prior day. I'm looking at top line revenue. I'm looking at all of my net promoter scores, my customer satisfaction ratings across all the brands. I look at an AI analysis of the sentiment, what are customers saying coming out of the weekend. And then on Mondays, we go into leadership meetings that are 4 or 5 hours long, where we're looking at how did we perform last weekend and what are the customers are saying. I always talk about like running a business is like coaching a sports team. Mondays for us, we come in and we review the film of how we played. And then we make adjustments on how we're going to play the game, right? And attack the opponent this next week. And we do that over and over and over again. And these KPIs that we set, those lead pins, we're always looking at how are we positively changing those KPIs to know if we're doing a good job or not. Because too many times in business, people mistake activity for achievement. And so it's like, let's make sure that everything we're spending our time on is impacting those lead pins in a positive way.
I love everything you're saying. It's very intentional. Everything you're doing is very intentional, and it's by design, and it requires empathy. Wouldn't you agree? You've got to have a lot of empathy for your customers, for the markets, to care at that level where you're actually doing sentiment analysis and figuring out where do we need to work on based on real-time feedback. Do you think that, and this is a big question because we want to really dive into whether that's scalable. I think a lot of people are challenged with, how do I scale that level of empathy? And or even being so intentful and so purposeful. Do you think that it's possible to scale that? As Unleashed Brands grows, do you think like scaling empathy into your system so families still feel known and cared for, not just processed through a machine, like you said? What are some of the challenges of doing that as you scale, in scaling that empathy at the same time? Because a lot of businesses are challenged with that. When you're small, it's easier, but then it becomes a big challenge as you get bigger. How do you think it's possible to scale? And if you're doing that already, maybe share the secret sauce for everybody watching here as well.
Yeah, empathy can absolutely scale, but it cannot scale accidentally. Like, you're just not going to stumble into scaled empathy in a system of our size with 1,500 locations and over $1 billion of system-wide revenue annually. You have to be extremely intentional. And the way that we do that is through storytelling and also helping everyone understand that every single kid has a name. Every name is writing a story. And this story is about a kid on a journey trying to reach their destiny. And every destiny has got to matter to our operators and to our team. This isn't just birthday party 56 in this location in Dallas, or this isn't just member 600 in a little gym, in the Midwest. Like, that's Bentley, that's Landry, right? And what we tell people is that you've got to imagine that every kid that walks in your door has like a talk bubble above their head, and like they're dealing with something. And so we tell stories all the time and do it through videos and calls and webinars where we're talking about that over there is a kid who is in this venue today with their dad, who's a divorced dad, and he's just trying to earn back the love and the connection with this kid. This over here, this is a family that just moved into the community and they feel like they don't have friends. This is a kid who's here to celebrate straight A's. This is a kid who's having their birthday party, and kids are quite easy to please, but sometimes we forget that on this day, 7 years ago, that child was born, and the mom and dad in that room, this was one of the most important days in their life. And when you take these stories to heart and you let them rise up through the numbers, and you tell those to your system and how you're impacting people's lives, that's where you can get the empathy at scale. You have to help them understand the impact. So some of simple things we do at the end of every shift, and we're having huddle meetings with the staff, like tell me a story about a kid you impacted today. Tell me a story about what a parent said to you. Like, great example is we always have this happens over and over again. A parent brings a kid to Urban Air, for example, and they're a little shy and a little scared, and all of a sudden our staff we've taught them to get down at eye level and talk to that kid, and then end the conversation with a high five. And before you know it, the kid's climbing to that top of the wall, and the mom with tears in her eyes is saying, I just never thought that was in him. I never thought she could do that. Right. And so when you capture those stories and then you tell them back to the system, it helps people grab onto it. And it's the best storytellers win, and you've got to find those stories and tell them to your operators. And then obviously you got to hire for heart. Like I told people just a few minutes ago, we have a room full of potential franchisees who want to open up our businesses. And I'm like, if you don't like kids, if you don't like young adults, save us all the time and leave, because that's who we're stewarding. We are stewarding today's kids who are tomorrow's leaders. And our business never, it's very hard to find a business like ours where the intersection of making money and making an impact on the world collide. And so we take this as a calling, as our purpose is very important. And so it starts with hiring the right people. And then those stories make empathy contagious, right? And people want those stories. They want to be able to tell those stories. And that's for us where we've been able to make it scale, because a lot of our young adults, like, they're not chasing 50 cents more per hour. they're wanting purpose. They're wanting to feel like they're making an impact. And so helping them see it creates stickiness with your team. It creates stickiness with customers. And that's how you get empathy at scale.
I love this so much. Like if you're listening right now, like go back, just rewind that whole thing and listen again to it, because there's so many elements in there. And I want to say, like, you've got to have that non-negotiable of certain elements that you've got in order to get those stories. Like, what is this child's name? Understand that. And what is their story? And understanding that. Us from the marketing side of stuff, we know the power of story, and we know really, if we step back, this is how you build emotional connection, is through stories. And for you to be able to systemize that within your organization, it's almost like your internal sort of marketing in a way. It's just so huge. It just makes such a difference to everything. And that's how you take a system that could be cold and bring it to life, bring it and make it become a living organism, right? And make it prompt us to be better at what we do with who we serve. But that's a great transition into, you're starting to hit on the purpose stuff. Let's go there.
Let's do it. But before we do, we have an audience question, because
all right, let's do it.
You hit on, we always ask every guest about the purpose, but we go into that question. Let's see if we can answer this audience question. It looks more like an interview question there, Michael. How do you see Unleashed Brands in the next 5 years? A LinkedIn user put that question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Where we're going, to use one of my favorite brands, Marriott Bonvoy, we will be Marriott Bonvoy for kids, and the single trusted source that parents go to help their kids learn, play, and grow, find what's around them, easy to sign up, track their kids' progress. That's where we're going. We've got an app that's being released here in the second quarter, and that app stems around just that. And so think of us as parents are no longer, like, my vision, nirvana for me is that every morning on Mondays, families wake up, they're looking at our app, they're looking at maybe even a kind of like a skylight calendar connected to our app, and they're saying, Unleashed Brands is helping me navigate the youth enrichment journey. My kids are going somewhere almost every night of the week. They're providing me with content to help me understand this parenting journey. So think about, like, cell phone, no cell phone. When should I give a cell phone? Social media, no social media. I'm building an advisory board of pediatricians, youth enrichment specialists, psychologists that can really help parents along this journey, knowing that not every journey is the same. But we are committed to walking alongside parents while they're on that journey and helping them navigate. And so we will be the trusted name in youth enrichment 5 years from now, and the place that all families go when they're looking for something to help their kids learn, play, and grow.
I love it. Well, as I mentioned before we started, I still have a little one. I have grown kids, and I have a 9-year-old, and as newly incoming to the Dallas area soon, you're going to have another family that's going to be a customer for sure. All right, so let's go a little deeper. You might have touched on this a little bit, but I think one of the questions we asked all our guests is the purpose beyond the business itself. When companies talk about youth enrichment, it's easy to focus on activities, parties, programs, but underneath it all, there's a deeper why, and you mentioned some of it that holds the whole system together, makes it feel special instead of superficial. When you zoom out, from individual brands and you look at Unleashed Brands as a whole, what is the deeper purpose that drives the work you do with kids? Like your personal and company-wide purpose that's driving this forward, the bigger, higher purpose why, I guess we're trying to understand here, if you could answer that.
Yeah, when we are one team with one mission, all of our brands, they have unique offerings, they have unique missions inside the platform. But as a platform, we are one brand with one mission, which at the end of the day is to impact the lives of every kid by helping them learn, play, and grow inside of our fun, engaging, and inspiring experiences that at the end of the day help a kid become what they're destined to be. Everything else, our brands, the growth, the tech, our unit counts, that's just the delivery mechanism. We believe, and as a young founder, I started Urban Air at the age of 25, and some mentors in my life looked at me when I was scared and said, you don't have to wait until you're old to do something great. You can do something great today. And we believe kids don't need to be put in a back room and fed pizza and say, hey, be quiet until you're older. We believe that there's things implanted in every single kid where they can have their definition of greatness. And so it's our job just to help them get there, one step at a time, one brand at a time. And for me, like, I'm really an operator at heart, right? Like, I worked every position in the first Urban Air. Then I opened 2 more. I started to build systems because I couldn't be in 3 places at once. And at the end of the day, like, it all comes down to kids trying, failing, safely winning, learning, belonging. Like, that's what they want. And across all of our brands, that's what we do. For us, the way we do it is a trusted ecosystem, right? In a world of all this digital noise. And it's very simple. We help kids learn the basics of science, technology, engineering, art, and math. We help them identify and grow in their skills and hobbies. And we help them escape the world through play, where we create community in these environments. And so what I tell people is, like, the classes, the camps, the one-time events, the celebrations, the leagues, those are wrapped in logos and brand identities, but it's the outcomes that we all share. Every brand helps kids increase their confidence, like develop empathy, helps them develop grit, have courage, right? That is what we're after. We believe that we have the ability to impact today's kids who are going to be tomorrow's leaders and out there running the world when we're retired in rocking chairs. And I want to be able to look and say, hey, we left a little bit of an imprint on the world and a better place through what we get up and do every day.
Yeah, and you have such an opportunity for having some kind of ripple effect on society, right? Because of all those touch points you have there. You mentioned when you're being an operator and you're developing, 1, 2, 3, and you're trying to develop your systems. What always worried me in that part of the scaling of a business is when you're scaling your systems, how do you make sure you stay true culturally to what you wanted to? How can you get those systems to prompt that culture? Were you going through some of those thoughts and things when you're systemizing yourself?
Yeah, always, right? Like, and I think that's why it's important for people to have their mission and then to have core values, because the way you deliver your product or your service can change over time based on consumer behaviors changing, based on technology. But like, if you set your core values right, those should never change. They should surpass the test of time. They should still be here when I'm no longer here. And so that is a way you can filter everything through, even when the kind of the context and the landscape is changing, but by still having kind of your North Star, your true north. So those are 2 things I would recommend to people, if they haven't done it, is an actionable mission. And so when you think about our mission to impact the lives of every kid, I take the words of that mission and I assign them to people and departments inside of the company. It's not just a saying on the wall. So when you think about to impact the lives of every kid, in order to do that, franchise development has to sell more franchises and open more locations. Marketing has to get more awareness out there. When we talk about enriching their lives through our fun, engaging, and inspiring experiences, the team that's in charge of innovation and building these things out, those words are circled. Or when you think about our operators, right, that's their job. And so when you develop your mission and you assign it out to all your people and all of your teams, then it gives them a functional way to actually go and accomplish it. And then with your core values, you say, filter every hire, every decision through these core values. And we've seen that's worked for us.
Yeah, I think that's just really that important part, is just continual auditing according to your values or your purpose, your mission, right? So, Michael, one question we always ask on this show at some form of this is, what role does love play in business?
Man, I think that it's something that you can't necessarily, you can't ignore it. right? And so I think that the difference though is, are you playing to be liked or are you playing to be loved? And how do you love? So what I always talk about to my team and both senior leadership and the executive team is that I want them at the end of the day, when they look back on working here, and specifically for me, I want them to say, man, he was the hardest guy I ever worked for. And I want him to say, because he pushed me to do things I never thought were possible, because he believed in me more than I believed in myself. On any given day, I liked or maybe didn't like the decisions he had to make, but I knew that he loved the company, loved our customers, and loved the people, and he was always making a decision for the betterment of the whole. There's nobody I would want in my corner if I got into the proverbial street fight in business. And man, that guy, like, he was always there. He was always working for me. And so, like, I think love to me is it's important. Like, if you play to be liked, then you're always thinking about, how is this particular decision going to be interpreted by the team? If you play to be loved, and loving people means I want them to win both personally and professionally. Everyone loves a winner. Like, we've all had coaches where we didn't really like him in the moment, but then we get to the end of the season and we're having some success and you end up liking that guy. And so part of loving someone is truth and love. Meaning, I might have to coach some people up about their behavior, their performance. And I believe you don't love someone if you don't address it, because you want them to win. And so I think it's how you define what that means to show love to your employees. That doesn't mean you've got to be a wallflower or that you can't address issues. Too many times people think that, there's no such thing as tough love. And so it's very similar in parenting, right? Like, I'm the parent that's, if you can't sing, I'm not going to tell you can sing. What I am going to help you do is identify what your gifts are, and I'm going to help direct you to that. And that's the same in business, is helping a team understand what talents they're blessed with, and how to go and maximize those opportunities, both personally and professionally. So I think you can't be successful if you don't love your team and love what you're doing.
Even the great book says God disciplines those he loves the most. So you're in good company there. Now, for leaders listening who want to grow, maybe even build platforms of their own, but do not want to lose the sense of community and humanity in the process, what is one concrete step they can take this month to bring more love and connection into how they do business?
Oh gosh.
We only ask the easy questions on the show.
Yeah. Geez, I think first you got to have the frame. Like, you got to have a good foundation, right? You can't build if you don't have a foundation. So I would think that mission, those core values are important. And then going, now, how do I actually and tangibly carry that out in the field in a practical way, right? So is it the greeting? Like, hey, we are going to create community, empathy, and love in our businesses this week by focusing on the greeting and using kids' names and talking to parents. Or here's how we're going to close out all of our sessions this week. I think too many times we try to eat the elephant in one bite instead of small, practical things that, when you stack on top of each other, you start to get the power of the law of aggregation of small gains. And you look up one day and you're like, man, I just can't believe the culture that we've created. Like, there's not a silver bullet. There's a lot of lead bullets that you got to fire over and over and over again. And a lot of times the way we do it is like, let's focus on something. Now let's go find some stories and some wins from what we were focusing on, tell those stories, and kind of circle back around and just double down. And so I would just simple, right? Like, something simple it
is simple. And I love that, because we talk about that a lot. It's like, when we were talking about Bliss, it's like build love into scalable systems. It's like, do just one loving thing. You don't have to eat the whole elephant, like you said. It's just little by little, add a little bit to it. And little by little makes a lot, right? Over time. And that's what you're saying. You look back and you're like, oh, wow, look at all we've done over time. It is almost starting with that. Just one little thing. Just look around you. One little thing you can systemize, or you can bring your team together around, and just start there.
Yep.
It really does come down to consistency and persistency and creating identity, because if you just seek motivation, it's emotional and that can fade. But identity is the understanding that you're that person, the go-to who gets it done, and that requires consistency and persistency. So how can people learn more about you if they want to connect with you, they want to learn about your brand or franchising? Where should they go?
So unleashbrands.com is the best place to learn about Unleashed Brands. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Michael O. Browning Jr. on LinkedIn. Love connecting, love answering people's questions. A lot of people have helped me along the way. I've always looked for mentors who have gone to the concert and have the t-shirt. So now I'm looking to pay it forward too. So would love to connect.
Michael, thanks for joining us today. I loved all the answers today. We really dove into some of those little things you can do in systems. I think that people can carry away from this. Continue what you're doing. You're doing great work out there. And to our listeners, thank you again for tuning in and asking the questions, and think about, your own organization. Ask where you are simply providing services and where you might really have an opportunity to build connections and a sense of belonging in what you do. So thank you for joining us today on the Bliss Business Podcast, and we will see you next time.